Have you ever stood in the pet food aisle, staring at a wall of cans and bags, wondering if you're actually doing right by your cat? You're not alone. Millions of cat owners mix wet and dry food every day, convinced they're giving their pet a perfectly balanced diet, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of them are doing it wrong, and their cats are paying the price in ways that don't show up until years later, so stick around, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly what's happening inside your cat's body when you combine these two foods, and how to finally get it right. Let's start with something most owners get backwards. You might think that simply placing more water bowls around the house will fix your cat's hydration, but it won't, because cats descended from small desert predators in North Africa, animals that rarely needed to drink standing water since their prey was already full of moisture, and that ancient wiring is still active in your living room cat today, meaning their thirst signal is weak, almost switched off, so a bowl of water sitting untouched isn't proof your cat is fine. It's often proof of the opposite. This is exactly why wet food matters so much more than people assume. It isn't just a treat or a flavor booster, it's a hydration delivery system disguised as dinner, and a cat eating a genuinely wet food-forward diet can take in a significant portion of its daily water needs without ever approaching the water bowl, but adding one small pouch of wet food on top of a mountain of kibble barely moves the needle, since the ratio matters far more than the presence of wet food itself, and over months and years, that difference in hydration can quietly influence kidney health, urinary tract function, and how concentrated or diluted your cat's urine stays, which is why so many vets bring this up during routine checkups without owners realizing how much it actually matters. Here's where things get tricky. Owners often assume that because they're offering variety, they're automatically offering balance, but in reality, combination feeding is one of the sneakiest ways cats end up overweight, because when you feed only kibble, portioning is simple, yet once wet food enters the equation, most people eyeball it, a splash of gravy here, a heaping scoop there, and suddenly your cat's daily intake has quietly doubled without anyone noticing, and the weight doesn't appear. Overnight, it creeps in slowly, month after month, until one day you realize your cat can no longer clean itself properly or jump onto the couch without hesitation, and by then, extra weight is already placing strain on joints, on the heart, and on overall energy levels, but the fix isn't complicated. It just requires treating wet and dry food as two halves of the same daily budget rather than two separate meals stacked on top of each other, which means figuring out your cat's total daily calorie needs first, and then splitting that number thoughtfully between both food types instead of guessing. A lot of owners keep dry food in the bowl specifically because they've heard it cleans teeth, but the science tells a different story, since most kibble shatters the instant a cat bites down, doing little more than a light dusting of the tooth surface, and any dental benefit is minor at best, certainly not a substitute for actual dental care like brushing or vet-approved dental treats, while what dry food actually offers is convenience. It doesn't spoil quickly, it's easy to portion, and it gives cats something satisfying to crunch, whereas wet food brings a higher concentration of animal protein and a texture closer to what a cat would eat in the wild. So neither food is the villain here. The real issue is when one completely overshadows the other and cats lose access to the specific benefits each one provides, and that's really the heart of good combination feeding. Letting each food do the job it's naturally best at instead of expecting one to cover for the other. Every cat owner knows a cat that cries at 5 a.m., paces near the kitchen, or seems permanently hungry no matter how much it eats, and owners often chalk this up to personality, but more often than not, it's a feeding pattern problem, since wet food tends to create a stronger, longer-lasting sense of fullness than dry food alone thanks to its protein and moisture content. And the real trap is leaving dry kibble out around the clock while also serving wet meals at set times, which teaches a cat to graze constantly instead of eating structured meals, keeping their appetite in a near-permanent on state, whereas cats that transition to scheduled, portioned meals, where both wet and dry food are served together rather than kibble being available endlessly, often become noticeably calmer and far less food-obsessed within just a couple of weeks, and many owners report their cats sleeping more peacefully at night once this shift happens, simply because the constant hunt for food finally stops. If there's a single mistake responsible for most combination feeding failures, it's mixing wet and dry food into one bowl and walking away for the day, because it feels efficient, but wet food begins losing freshness the moment it hits open air. Moisture seeps into the kibble, turning it soggy and unappealing, while the wet portion dries out and becomes less palatable and, over several hours, can even become unsafe to eat. So a cat returning hours later to finish breakfast is really eating something far less enticing than what was originally served, and the better habit is to serve wet food during defined meal times. Let your cat eat within a reasonable window, usually 20 to 30 minutes, and then remove anything left behind, storing unused portions properly in the fridge for later rather than leaving them exposed. Beyond just freshness and portioning, timing itself plays a bigger role than most people expect, because cats are naturally wired to eat multiple small meals throughout the day rather than 1 or 2 large ones, so breaking their daily food budget into 3 or 4 smaller combination meals, rather than 2 big servings, often leads to steadier energy, less begging, and a calmer overall temperament. And this is especially useful for multi-cat households where competition over food can create stress if meals aren't structured properly. So should you combine wet and dry food? The honest answer is yes, but only when it's done with intention. Done carelessly, it can quietly lead to dehydration risk, weight gain, and a cat that's always circling the food bowl, but done thoughtfully, with wet food making up a meaningful share of calories, portions calculated as one unified daily plan, meals served fresh on a consistent schedule, and each food type allowed to contribute what it does best. It becomes one of the most effective and sustainable ways to support your cat's health, weight, hydration, and happiness for years to come. So if this changed the way you think about feeding your cat, let us know in the comments what your current routine looks like, whether it's wet, dry, or a mix of both. And don't forget to subscribe for more science-backed cat care tips that help you understand what your feline friend actually needs.